Okay, so this is the Terra Incognita sampler, and we're going to start off with Marc Janssen. We have 5 different authors. Hopefully, one of them still trying to get in, coming, but thank you all for coming, and we're going to go ahead and get started with Marc. If you could do a quick introduction of yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, thanks. My name is Marc Janssen. I am a...
Oh, wait, Marc. Sorry, Marc, I muted you too.
That's okay, technology. Aside from being a poet, I also coordinate the Salem Poetry Project and also the Salem Poetry Festival. So if you want to know what's going on in the Mid-Valley for poetry, you can access us on Facebook. The Salem Poetry Project is a Facebook group there, and we tend to show what's going on in Salem and the surrounding area. I'll let Amalie talk about Terra Incognita specifically. I tend not to write poems that are about that are politically based or about the climate, but I do have some, and so I was very pleased when Amalie chose a couple of them to be in the book. And so I'm going to read just a couple of poems here, a handful. And this first one is from the book. It's called Easy Oregon. What is a symbol of the West? The moss-drizzled tree, the rain-slick concrete, the ghost town circling the closed mill. What's an appropriate symbol? Dusky geese honking the morning, a protected wolf drinking from the Deschutes, dry, empty fields of Klamath County. Dairy farmers fighting with new neighbors, loggers standing in line at the unemployment office, fishermen selling their boats. January at the top of Mount Hood. Snow sings into place. A thin, anemic dusting of song. In what used to be the first movement of a magnificent symphony in white. So that's that one. I also chose another one from Terra Incognita. It's called The Dust Men. They were there before the city arose. Arise. Before they rise, shaking with fearful anger. Look at those workers out there, stretching, gritting teeth, sweating in the glow of computer screens, in the streets, toiling in that illusion that if they worked hard, work smart, work loyally, that the faceless girl from the faceless Human Resources Department, renamed Employment Engagement, renamed Capital Management, renamed People Operations, renamed Employee Support, from the faceless corporation wouldn't cut them loose to save a few dollars on a proprietary Excel spreadsheet. Shake your fists. Vote for your walls, spread your memes, spit anger at some brown kid. It will get you nothing. You will rise before the city. Arise. None of it will matter until you do. This next poem, I just have 3 left here. This next poem is called Statues of Judas, which ran in the New Verse News, which is a publication that's kind of along the same lines. If you like Terra Incognita, you'll like the New Verse News as well. It's called Statues of Judas. Outside the bank, someone erected a geometric deposit, a statue of sorts, a boring kind. There are not too many statues of St. Francis outside of banks. The kind of statue a Catholic kid would stop and look up to, his hand shading his eyes from the sun. There's not too many statues of Martin Luther King outside of banks. Well, minorities really aren't the best customers, so why bother? There's not too many statues of Jonas Salk outside of banks, holding a test tube that fills with water so birds could sit on his arm and freely drink. No, this is an abstract, a purely intellectual representation, a series of banal blocks and multicolors. It's difficult to see, but if you look long enough, really look, it will kiss you on the cheek. So I read this next poem with a little bit of trepidation. This one's from Terra Incognita, because if you take this stuff too seriously and you don't see the humor in it, it'll drive you crazy. And so I'm reading this because I've been asked to. It's called Disqualification Number 10. Do you have crabs in your beard? Do you get into long, screaming arguments on the phone with your wife, shattering the relative peace of the funeral home? The kids in elementary school call you scabies? Were you a cereal paste eater in kindergarten? Wear a dunce cap, a Burger King crown, an embarrassing hairstyle? After you lose at strip poker, do you just go home without any clothes on? You call your wife mother. You call your son grandpa. You want to pass a law that makes all farts visible? If you hear the term funneled money, you think, yeah, that's normal. What could be wrong with that? You ever pee on a mattress because some Russian guy gave you a wad of greasy euros? Do you really hate something like kittens or babies or delicious food? And if you had the ability to run the department of kittens or babies or delicious food, would you do it? Did you ever shoot a friend of yours in the face? Maybe not a close friend, more like an acquaintance. Saltwater taffy or pink slime. Can you tell the difference when there's a lingering taste of ammonia in your mouth and your roommate is laughing hysterically? Do not worry. None of this will disqualify you from being the next member of Donald Trump's cabinet. That's that one.
Mark, we have to know who forced you to read that one.
I'm not going to say. I'm going to protect the innocent.
Okay, that's fine.
This is my last one, and this one isn't published yet, but it's about the dignity of work. It's something that I think is germane to this subject. Doing what you have to do. It's called 8:20 p.m. the Toyota dealership on Tuesday. The vacuum sounds like a saxophone crying in a lonely, bedrizzled alley. All the staff from service are gone. The mechanics, the runners, all the cashiers, the people waiting for oil changes and checkups are gone. Office staff. The owner and his incontinent Yorkie poo are gone. Most of the sales staff are gone. Darkness is easy in November. Second nature. The way emptiness is second nature to a mixing bowl. The way wetness is easy, standing at the tide line with breakers rushing the beach. 8 o'clock is an easy darkness as the sky releases the sun behind a ceiling of gray. Most people would be home. Most people. Dinner in their bellies and feet up. Outside cars sparkle, colors crackle under blue lights and rain. Both will continue all night. One customer is left, an old man cantankerring after a crew cab. He thinks by staying late and drawing this out, he could get a better deal. He may. Or he may just reap a reputation. They're in the GSM's office right now, fencing, wrestling, or some long codified dance, touch and move, touch and move, touch and move, both in verbal circumambulations. Buying is as easy as it is hard to sell. And the reverse. Hidden are the calculations, the terms of worth that cloud the fulcrum of commerce, that directs treasure from hand to hand to hand to hand. Money is as easy as November darkness, hidden under fluorescent lights. Thank you. That's all for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. That was great. Real quick, I was just going to read off. Somebody said super reading, Mark, with tons of explanations. Anna said cereal paste eater, LOL. She quoted emptiness is second nature to a mixing bowl. Dandy image, she said. I really thought the bank one was pretty heavy. And then some of the others were comical. So I really loved that balance. That was me. Somebody else said lovely reading, Mark. Amalie, are you with us?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
There she
Okay.
is. There's our girl.
Let me say, I'm sorry about the mix-up. I have no idea. I mean, Annis will testify. We did Zoom this morning. Everything was fine. Okay. So it might be a little late to do the introduction, but since this is for Terra Incognita, I will, I have a little thing here. I'm not going to read the whole thing now, but first of all, thank you for hosting this. And thank you everybody who's come, and thank you for being patient with me. Okay, the figure on the front cover is moving into the darkness, and he's going into unknown territory. So this book and our first anthology both have the subtitle of Oregon Poets Write for Ecological, Social, Political, and Economic Justice. In the light of recent events, the economy tanking, COVID, and the recent protests and the opening of the national festering sore of racism, things have changed. So now it looks like in order to clean up the world, we need to clean ourselves up first. We need to look inside. We need to order our own hearts and minds in order to do right by not only the planet, but our fellow human beings. So we are moving into unknown territory, for sure. Okay, I made that short, and
And Marilyn's next, if you're wondering.
I know, and I have her, I have it already. What are you doing?
The cat wants to be fed.
Oh, gotta feed the cat. Marilyn Johnston is a Salem poet and filmmaker. In recent years, she received a Robert Penn Warren Writing Competition Prize and fellowships from Oregon Literary Arts, the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund, and the Fish Trap Foundations. She founded the Mid-Valley Veterans Writers and was a facilitator in the Oregon Humanities Council's On Coming Home project designed for veterans returning from war. She currently teaches poetry in the Artist in the Schools program, primarily working with incarcerated youth. Marilyn's writing has been published in Calyx, Natural Bridge, Poetica Magazine, Windfall, Voice Catcher, Moments Before Midnight, and the War, Literature, and the Arts Journal. Her chapbook, Red Dust Rising, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize, and her full poetry collection, Before Igniting, was published in February 2020. And I might say her presentation at the Silverton Poetry Festival was absolutely wonderful. Marilyn.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Paul. And it's so great to see you all. And all the wonderful people that I'm reading with, and I really appreciate it. So because I do write about war, I thought I'd start with that. This is the poem that I submitted to Terra Incognita, and it's called After War. And I started writing, my husband was in the Vietnam War, and I think I write, and I started writing to make sense of our life and recovery from war. So here it is, After War. In 4th grade, our teacher taught us how to write with invisible ink. We dip a Q-tip into lemon juice, pen our words onto jagged edge strips of leftover paper, then hold a lit candle underneath and wait until the message came through. I found out then how much heat it takes to lift up invisible words, but not the time needed to buff down the jagged edges. My husband's memories slow to appear, lit deep, left to smolder. The moonless night, a Viet Cong soldier with a satchel charge in his hand ran into a concertina wire strung on the north side of the base. My husband and his platoon picked up pieces of the man at daybreak, strewn along the hillside. And the stifling day on his supply route, when he found 18 women and children machine gunned down. Every day, sweat dripping like hate for war, its collateral. Every day wanting it over to get home and never re-up. But how do you leave a group of men knowing any one of them would walk in a jungle all night with a broken leg to find you? It's taken 50 years, even after the Veterans Against the War marches, and through the long darkness when the nightmares come, to decode these unwritten words as they emerge. What with the blast of the howitzers out our bedroom window and the roar of the choppers as if still overhead. But the years have reduced the red smoke grenades marking the landing zone to only a hazy scrim on the horizon. Now we're beginning to decode those unwritten words as they emerge. Now finally there's depth, the underpinnings of relief lifting, a searing clarity. So I think for the last, 5 months, and certainly before then, I would say the last couple of years, I've been trying to find a way to express things in nature and other ways. And I think a lot of us write, again, to find solace in ways we can. So I thought I'd read this one. It's called Writing in the Wild Times. I shared the path with them, followed the mallard and her clutch down the oriental poppy line trail. I wanted to call, wait up, do not be afraid, but it would be futile. On campus, ducks often congregate underneath the narrow arch of the bridge by this garden. They are well nourished during months when the students linger, but this is the start of spring break, the parking lot still empty. We artists and writers, like the wanderers left behind amid the full blossoms. It's been quite a time. The city alerts, the tendency to hoard, the emergency systems we'd relied on fractured, our country seemingly torn from its hinges, the truth as false as a fresh start. But here we can pretend the danger is past, nothing amiss. The mallard emerges from the tall grass and her 6 ducklings follow her in a line. Then one by one dip down in the tumescent stream, heartbreaking in their trust. And I have 2 granddaughters, 3 and 5. One of my daughters is married and lives in Spain, and the other daughter lives in Vermont. So this is how we communicate, like we're doing tonight. And the 5-year-old often calls me from Vermont, and she's dancing in her tutu. So this is called Pirouettes. She moves around the room, pirouetting, one leg extended, one curled as if in a question, her full face of joy and awe. I remember when her mom and her auntie held that look of wonder, living only this moment. And it's times like this of disconnect, as if we too wake each day, pirouetting through the unknown, one leg extended, one curled, as if in a question. And this is going to be my last poem. And I know it's not close to Oak Ridge, but I wanted to pick a poem that I wrote somewhere south of, I live in the village of Maclay, east of Salem. And it's called On the Road to Oak Ridge. Mid-morning, and I'm late to the meeting at the town hall, and I'm only outside of Eugene. But the shy light distracts, no one in front or behind, a good country tune on the AM station. And then, as if choreographed, elk enter from each side of the highway, 7 of them. And I'm following as if without hands on the wheel, and they're pulling me as if they knew I needed this ride. The chance to breathe deep, in control of nothing. We travel like that for miles, smooth and steady, and we travel like that until Oak Ridge approaches around the final bend in the road, until the elk part as gracefully as they come, like the Red Sea, only kind and silent. Thank you.
Very cool. Thanks, Marilyn. I think out here in isolation, Oak Ridge isn't that far, right? Hold on, I'm going to read a couple things from the chat before I turn it over to Amalie real quick. Somebody wrote, love that last poem. Annis wrote, heartbreaking in their trust. Love this great visual of the elk pulling you along. Somebody else wrote, Jade wrote, wonderfully deep and moving poem, Marilyn. If I heard the line right, I wrote sweat dripping with hate. Is that what you said? I love that line. What? Hate? Yeah, that's
sweat dripping like hate.
Yeah, love that line. That's awesome. I'm gonna turn it back over to Amalie.
There, okay. Can you hear me? No. Okay. No.
Don't scare me like that.
Okay. Okay. First, I want to say hello to my sister joining us from Illinois. Hi, Marvi. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Okay, next up is my friend Jade Rosina McCutcheon, who holds a Doctor of Creative Arts from the University of Technology, Sydney, and a PhD from the University of Melbourne. She graduated from the National Institute of Dramatic Art and has worked as a professional theater director in Australia, the US, as well as in many universities. She has written 4 books on performance, has 7 chapters published in peer-reviewed volumes, and poetry in Australian university magazines. Her new book with Finishing Line Press is Small Feather. And so, Doctor, you're up.
Okay, so I'm just going to start with a poem in Terra Incognita called The Needleworker. It's a fairly long one, so you might want to sit back. Was it the color of her laughter or the sound of golden hair that made the rivers babble and the children stop and stare? For truly she was gorgeous, resplendent in her prime. She had sewed their clothes and healed their woes throughout the whole of time. The townsfolk gathered near her to feel her light-filled soul. They loved to see her skill with the thread as she created new from old. She would sit beneath her magic tree, sewing the light to each gown. She hummed and sang her favorite song while the children gathered around. But times grew hard and the people grew cold. A dark wind crawled through a crack in the fold. A red-blue moon eclipsed the sky, and a mighty crash was heard. The tall great oak in the heart of the town fell screaming to the earth. "I felled the tree and now we have wood," screamed the woodchopper with delight. "Hooray, I will have fire this winter." But the needleworker cried all night. She wept in anguish over the tree. It was planted so long ago. "It is time," she said. "My heart is done," to the fluttering shadow of a crow. She took her needle and her thread down to the heart of the oak. She sewed in her tears to the skin of the tree until finally the thread broke. "I shall never sew or mend again, for you have killed the tree. I will return to the source that first breathed light and surrender the one that is me. I've toiled for you for so many years. I've given the skin off my hands, but never once have you aided me or taken care of your land." The song was then sung, the needleworker gone. The townspeople cried out in grief. "But what will we do? How will we sew? Leave us your tools at least." The soft haunting song of her final refrain still flows through the town to this day. Water the ground, plant the seed, speak to the earth and pray. That's it. The next one is called Dust, and it's also in Terra Incognita. I live on the edge of an elephant, in the breath of a bear. The mane of a prowling lion shapes in the air. In my breath, my eyes, my hair. A gala of parts, bits and skins, wafting waste, winds, perhaps a tear in the backdrop, an empty space in the parking lot, a zebra, a tree no longer there. We are withered parchment from another time, lost memories, rings of bark, fossils found bleached, white bones. I am missing the full picture. It touches a place beyond, like a blue whale that is nearly no longer there. This ancient procession, all dust. The dust of my ancestors already gone, and then it might be me, extinct like the bee. And the last one that I have is a more recent one, and I'm not sure where it will end up, but it's just called We Have But a Moment. Does it ache already, blood on snow, shooting through the sleet-crusted sermons into here, now, jabbing your thoughts with pinprick precision, just to let you know all things are born, all things die? Did the fires remind you? Did the death of your grandma remind you? Does the threat of war remind you? That we live and we die every moment, every day. So why the fuss? The scratching, searing, sore, itching to be torn, the rush to scream, to rant at the world, your mum, your dad, the president, your teacher, your brother, your sister. The family is dead. Now you are hurting. A koala dead, a national monument destroyed, a black woman shot, a young boy drowned, a boat capsizing, lost, dark water. What are you doing here, this day, this life, this earth? Where is your mind? What do you want? When will you speak? That's
Wow.
it.
That one was really impressive. The way it began and ended. Just wow. Let's see what people have to say here.
Thank you.
Oh, as Anna said, great opening of this last poem. She also quoted the Needleworker, "Speak to the earth." Somebody else said wonderful imagery. And And I forgot to mention earlier, I had asked Marc to post a link to his event tonight, to his poetry event with the Salem Poetry Project. Is that the link, Marc?
Yeah, it looks like it.
That's the link to the Facebook group. I can put the link to the actual event.
Yeah, why don't you
Let's see if I
post
can
it in
figure
case anybody wants to join you later?
Okay,
And throw the time in there if you don't mind. Thanks, Marc.
sure.
Go ahead, Amalie. It's all yours.
Okay. All right. Next up is Charles Castle, who returned to creative writing after a career in healthcare and construction. He has 3 books of poetry: Living with Patriarchs, A Seasoned Second Coming, and A Good Night in America. Charles will step up at any open mic, but what gives him the most pleasure is having a poem in a stairwell of a parking structure as part of the City of Eugene Step into Poetry installation, and you're in for a treat. Hi, Charles.
All right. Thank you, Amalie. I'll just add that more recently, Chasing Down the Storm.
Sorry.
Amalie and Bob did a great job putting out Terra Incognita, and particularly that they have so many Oregon poets and others involved. I think it's great. I'm going to read 3 poems, 1 from the book and 2 that since March 14th, when at least myself and my partner locked down, a few poems came out of those first few weeks, trying to come to terms with everything that was going on. But I'll start with Shrinking Vivid. Not far from here are wetlands, meadow larks, wood ducks, harrier hawks, tall green grasses. We walk the berm where rusted rails divide and a creek drains the city. Car-cluttered roads border in 4 directions. Jets fly low and press the land, a constant migration of metal wings. We shrink inward, even as sun and moon fill the sky. When I was a child, I played in nature. Days passed with their seasons. Where are the undivided places? Where are the songbirds now, and all their vivid colors? Well, it's pretty hard to avoid the political situation that we're in and the waiting, if you will, for how it may or may not resolve. This one's called The April Fools. Who could see it coming? Who would call the tale? Who would raise the cross? Who would place the nail? Who would lean on hope? Who would lean on prayer? Who would bend to help and lift the body there? Who would stand with kings? Who would lie with snakes? Who would guard the richest and the common man forsake? Who would lead by ignorance? Who would take by guile? Who would pose for pictures with a viper for a smile? Who'd accept the sacrifice of a daughter or a son and justify the losses by the elections they had won? An undivided people who support the common good would hold them all accountable and replace them when we should.
Yeah.
Last poem is a little longer, and I'm just gonna go for it. It's called The Ballad of Chaos Nightingale. My name is Chaos Nightingale. My mother christened me, but it was my father's song I followed all these years, and they have bent me with life's uneven weight. I don't complain, I welcome it, for my muse and I are one. We share the same infirmities, leaning on them with a skull-capped cane as if into a headwind. So we begin, as we'll end, where we all must end. You now bear witness to our travails in these somber times. See where I reside behind this silent church, in a stone house, in a field of standing stones. Here I live on a broth of flowers left for grief, my bread a crust of loss. I spend my days as a poor man spends, little by little, close to nothing. But nothing or close to it is enough, and my prayers are often for nothing. The hide on my feet is the leather of my coming and going. I go as best I can, though less of me returns. Days are distractions, but my nights are a passage by dream, and all we'll meet along the way are like me. And though they may not favor me, we are allied by our attire. My coat is threadbare to sky, a tatter to rain. My hat is a rag-worn crown. The weather is an advancing of clouds towards storm, building on the hours. On this branch of road I sing through dust and cloudburst. Down a thorn-lined path we cross a bridge into a city shrouded by fog. To describe the architecture is to describe fog giving birth to spires under a halo of moons. In a pandemic, the inhabitants sleep and breathe neither day nor night. We rarely see but a glimpse of them. A murmur of prayer narrows through the streets. There are no songs shared among ravens and crows. Wood and stone render perspectives of charmed facades along a cobbled boulevard into the central square. You might wonder what intelligence designed it. But if genius gave it order, we are strangers to it. Yet there are inscriptions on the arches that genius had some hand in, but in a language long forgotten. In this quaint and vacant neighborhood, a bell rings once. The shadows absorb the peal and the hour is hidden. In the air hangs an aroma of bread we've never tasted. Somewhere a baker kneads in solitude, his hands a contrast of shadows cast by fire on leavened dough from where the oven's warm. And here is a single lamp-lit lane where we browse about the windowed shops, but carelessly. Our remoteness is a currency without exchange on this side of bolted doors, with their keepers all burrowed home. Up the wine-stained stoops of shuttered taverns, copper counters reek of hops. The upturned chairs on cafe tables reach toward darkened ceiling fans. The alleys that we pass are robbed of light. Our destination nears. We climb a hill where a bell tower with a clock appears, but not a knell upon the knoll will tell the hour. And though we spend it here, we cannot stay. We only visit to take the view. And as the fog withdraws and a silent city waits, now we'll sing a penny's love to the disease and beg it, leave us whole again and free. Or by the dawn, return across the bridge to find the field of stones unchanged, but for our flowered broth of sustenance, we collect along with water from the rain.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to read a couple comments really quick, and then we got to get Amalie going here. Anna said, Charles, great imagery in Ballad of K.S. Nightingale. And she put in quotes, an aroma of bread we never tasted. Daniel agreed, yes, love that line too, Charles. I wrote so visually poetic. I think that might have been the one before it. I can't remember the name. Somebody wrote, Jade wrote, great poem, Charles, replace them when we should. Annis wrote, Charles, I love this one, the April Fools, so appropriate. We can look at this later and I can send you guys the chat, but I think we need to move into Amalie. And so she doesn't have to introduce herself. I will introduce her. And I wanted to add that the other, when she mentioned Moments Before Midnight, that's the other anthology she edited in addition to Terra Incognita. There it is. And Amalie also has published some of her own fiction as well. I think she has a series, am I right?
Yes.
And that can all be found at the Bob Hill Publishing website. Amalie Rush Hill is a poet, artist, and novelist living in rural Marion County. Her poems appear in the anthologies Moments Before Midnight and Terra Incognita, which we're celebrating tonight. Examples of her artwork can be found on the book covers. So did you draw that one, Amalie, on Terra Incognita?
This one.
Thank you for explaining that, because I've been wondering about that cover for a while. I've used the cover a number of times because Amalie and I were originally going to do an in-person anthology reading at the library in March, and unfortunately I had to close it down the day before the event because of COVID-19 and the library closing. So Amalie, I'm going to let you take it away. I hope y'all can stay a little later for Amalie's reading because it's going to be awesome. Take it away.
Thank you. Okay, this is a COVID-19 poem. It's called Drifting. I'm drifting away on a whim, on a moonbeam, on a random thought. I'm not tethered to the ground anymore. Life has slowed to the point of no point. I feel adrift at sea on a raft, bobbing up and down, nodding off to sleep. I get up to make tea, do a chore, wash dishes, sweep the floor. The days are chilly and partly cloudy, as if the weather can't even decide if it will remain winter or move into spring. Birds chirp and flit about. The big gray doves are fat and round. The red-winged blackbirds call out to prospective mates. Stellar's jays dart and squawk, and geese fly over in flocks. But my world has changed. I am no longer moving about freely. I might as well be a nun cloistered in a convent. I live with two other people, one old and waning, the other tends to her. So I am here, mostly alone by myself. It's okay. Luckily, I like my own company. I have many things to keep myself occupied, but I still feel like floating away, that gravity is no longer doing its job. Someone catch me as I drift past, or maybe I'll rise up through the uncertain clouds into the stratosphere and float out into space. I'll be fine. There are atoms of atmosphere, and I can hold my breath far from the pandemic. From up here, I can see the entire universe. Come join me. Take my hand and we'll drift away together. Okay. The Grove. Atop a hill to the west, left turn off the highway toward the ocean, and up a steep road was a grove of white oaks, old trees, tall and stately. The trees were imbued with an aura of wisdom, of awe, of wonder, like a cathedral, not man-made, much deeper, older, more elemental, essential. They radiated belonging and enveloped me in a welcoming embrace. If I could have grown roots then and there to push into the rocky soil and stay in place, becoming one with the hill, with the ground, with the grove, I would have been happy, content to be one with the trees and of those on other hills, as far as the eye could see. I'm going to end with, I always end with this when I do Terra Incognita events because I like it. Who saves the world? The universe exploded into the void, scattering energy, coalescing particles into atoms, into matter, into living potential, revolving into stars and planets, evolving into microscopic life. It was hurled forth by what some would call God or physics, a splendid and varied creation, and on this small and mostly insignificant orb, there has arisen abundant life. The planet's core, its heart pulses with fire, heating the mantle. Its bones, the uplifted mountains, sing with joy against the wind of ages, but it has been overtaken by a strange and invasive species, possibly alien to the world, whose sole purpose seems intent on obliterating everything unlike itself. And among this species are those who would even eliminate others of its own kind, some of whom believe the planet will be saved by war, by muscle and might. But if it is to be truly saved, redeemed, and made whole, it will be by those who love, by poets and dreamers. Thank you, Paul.
Very good. Yes, thank you, Amalie. Awesome. And thank you for all your help organizing. Hey, if everybody wants, please unmute yourselves. My unmute all feature is not working and Zoom hasn't been able to help me with that. So you guys know how to unmute yourselves? Everybody can unmute and talk to the authors if you like, ask questions.
That was wonderful.
Yes, it was. Somebody said, redeemed by poets and dreamers. Love this. Jade said, so soulful, Amalie.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, that one's to me. I won't read that. Yeah, yes, redeemed by love. Love is all in caps. Untethered. Yes, me too, Suzanne said. Anna said, drifting, my world has changed. We can all relate. Does anybody else have any questions or any comments? We can just open it up now.
It was such a rich smorgasbord. It's very hard to kind of go back in the head to remember specifics of them. It's like being in an art gallery and just wandering up and down the corridors of wonderful richness. I mean, everyone gave wonderful poetry.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, it was just fascinating to hear all the different poems, and it's a real good snapshot of what the whole book must entail. So I'm really pleased about that, to know that. It was terrific. Thank you.
Thank
One
you.
thing I'd like to add about the book, because right now I'm just thinking about ways of celebrating the diversity of our community or communities at the library. And I just wanted to point out that some of the poems in the anthology are actually in Spanish. Some of them, you know, there's
Yes.
poems in English and Spanish. So I thought that was
And-
very cool as well.
Yeah, untranslated.
And there are some in Australian as well.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. Even more diverse.
Yes, they are.
Is there a translation app for that?
Oh dear.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming and for everybody who read. Obviously, not all the poems you heard tonight were from the book, but I think it's a great sampling of the work that these people do. And I want to say that Moments Before Midnight had 26 Oregon poets. It came out in, I think, the spring or April, I think, of 2018. Terra Incognita came out in August of 2019, and there are 42 poets. So
Wow.
I am
Cool.
very, very happy and honored to be able to have these people represented in our book. So yeah, I know lots of poets.
You do.
Amalie, you should mention that the proceeds, went to a good cause.
Yes, Moments Before Midnight, all the proceeds went to the ACLU. Terra Incognita, we didn't do that because we figured that we'd send some of that back to the poets themselves. Has anybody got a check? I don't think so.
And then we gave it to a good cause.
But, we know as poets that these are not exactly bestsellers. We do it for love, not for money. So.
Right.
So Amalie, I have a question from Daniel. He's unmuted, but his mic isn't working like yours was earlier. But he had asked, are there any poems in this collection from the local tribes here in Coos?
No.
I kind of doubt it.
No, but we're always open to, when we do another one, we're always open to more people and diversity. I mean, this is a wonderful world we live in. It's full of people from everywhere and all kinds of backgrounds, and I embrace them all. So yeah, I know where to come if I want. Yes.
I'm just thinking of Daniel's question, and there's very few Coos Indians left at this point, as far as I know, because so many were wiped out with the awful move north. I also wanted to point out that I reinserted everybody, all the poets' email addresses in the side, because they all have published work outside of the anthology. So if you want to support them, shoot them an email. I'm sure they can get you some of their work. And we do have a couple copies of the Incognita anthology at the library for checkout as well, because Amalie graciously donated them. Yes, very cool. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share or ask the poets?
I would like to share.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay,
no hurry.
I'll go ahead. Paul, I want to share that last week I did a recording with Edie Kronk in Florence for KXCR, the radio station, local Florence radio station. And she is looking for poets to spotlight on her radio show.
Excellent.
Weekly half-hour poetry radio show. And so I'm going to put my email in the chat box. If you are interested, poets, in contacting Edie and sending her a sample of your work and getting her on her radio interview, she would be most grateful. She's always looking for poets. And my interview is supposed to air next Thursday on KCZR, I think it's KCZR or KXCR, I don't know which one, but it's 90.7 on your dial. So I'm going to put my email in the chat box, okay?
Yeah.
And if anybody doesn't get the email, you can always contact me through the library, and I can put you in contact with Annis.
Yeah. And I want to say too that Annis and Ron Montgomery are working together on a new book. too. So yeah, about recent events. So yay.
Excellent.
Well, not yay. I mean, it's not a good thing, but yeah,
But
we'll-
yay, it'll be a beautiful book.
yes, it will. Yes. 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 So
At least we can read about it in a poetic format.
yeah. Yes.
Cool, Jade.
Yes.
Good.
And I just wanted to
Okay.
add, I love that first poem, Amalie, that introspective poem. I think we can all relate right now to being
And-
stuck yet lonely. You know, we're all stuck with all the people in our home, yet we're all feeling a bit lonely, I think, right now. So that I could really relate to that one.
And that was written early on. I think we've all gotten used to it by now. So.
Yes, we
Yeah, I
had some of
think
these issues
even
before.
even if you like your own company, it's there are only so many branches of self one can wander out along.
Oh, well, speak for yourself, my dear.
Oh, okay, you
Well put, Jade.
cosmos traveler.
Well, thank you all.
Yeah,
It was
thank you.
It was
all
lovely.
also.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Appreciate y'all
Nice to see
coming.
you, Marby.
And I'm gonna post I will be posting the recording on YouTube either tomorrow or early next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Cool. Thanks, y'all.
Right.
Appreciate it.